So, let's face it, not everyone can be the Joker or Victor Von Doom. Some nefarious guys and gals just have to get along with a gimmick and a costume and just hope for the best, and they usually end up on the receiving end of a hero's punch and a lengthy jail stay. But there are a lucky few that someone eventually dusts off, washes away the silly, and makes that character into something special. And that's what we're here to talk about today, as I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 comic book supervillains improved through retcons. Number 10. The Orb. The unnamed child who would eventually be called the Orb was born with a giant eye for a head. He was abandoned as a child and grew up in a freak show, not learning to speak until adulthood. He eventually became a mercenary for hire and was hired by Daniel Ketch, the second Ghost Rider, to serve as the angel Zadkiel. The Orb formed a group called the Orblings to aid him in committing crimes. And once, while trying to rob a bank and while searching for jewels, the Orb encountered time diamonds just as Spider-Man and Wolverine arrived to intervene. The diamonds scattered them all across the timeline, and the Orb lived as a muscle-bound, heavily armed monster before he was forced back to the present and to jail. Now, the Orb's extrasensory powers caused him to have intense visions about the Watcher. With help, he broke into the Watcher's citadel and took his left eye. Eventually captured by Nick Fury, now called the Unseen, Orb was tortured for information on how to activate the right eye of the now dead Watcher. One of the eyes bonded with the Orb and gave him awareness on a cosmic scale. He decided to become a Watcher after a fashion, but was killed off by Doom Supreme. Number 9. Superboy-Prime, Clark Kent of Earth Prime. Now, this Superboy was found as a baby in the forest near the New England seaboard by Jerry and Naomi Kent. They named the baby Clark, even though Superman is a fictitious character in that world. Going to a costume party as a teenager with his girlfriend, Clark wore a Superman costume. At the beach party, a tidal wave swelled and threatened to destroy the small town. Just then, a cosmic vortex opened up and Earth 1's Superman was blown out. Superman quickly taught the boy how to use his powers, and the pair quickly averted the tidal wave, and they both decided to leave through the vortex. Then, Crisis on Infinite Earths completely destroyed Clark's universe. Having no place to go, he accompanied Earth 2's Superman, Lois Lane, and Earth 3's Alexander Luthor into an alternate dimension. Able to observe the new Earth, the already fragile Superboy became increasingly angry and frustrated at the way the heroes were conducting themselves. He started hitting the walls, and each hit changed the reality on Earth. Alexander intensified his frustration and empowered him until he broke free. Prime killed many heroes, including Connor Kent, before he was finally stopped and arrested by the Green Lantern Corps. The Batman Who Laughs recruited Superboy-Prime to use his reality-changing punches. However, Prime betrayed him, and the evil Batman tempted Prime with his own world, but he realized that it meant nothing without his girlfriend or his parents. He delivered on the last devastating blow and awoke to read a comic about his death, with his girlfriend then suggesting they go walk the dog. Happily, Prime realized that he was actually now home. Number 8. Black Hand, William Hand. Now, William Hand started out as a petty thief who kept track of his criminal exploits and all of the steps to becoming a better criminal in a journal, and he eventually created a device to siphon the power from a Green Lantern's ring, long obsessed with death. And so he created a costume for himself from the body bags of his victims and took the name Black Hand. The Spectre burned Hand's right hand and the device away, driving him insane. He was then abducted by aliens who amplified his absorption ability to one that allowed him to absorb life forces. Upon his return to Earth, Hand wandered into a hospital, absorbed the lives of 22 people, and restored his severed hand. Later, Hand began hearing voices of the Guardian of Death. Hand returned to the home of his wealthy family and killed each member before then killing himself. Disgraced Guardian of the Universe Scar created a Black Lantern ring that reanimated Hand as the Herald of the Guardian. Hand created hundreds of rings that animated the corpses of dead heroes, villains, and people close to them. It took the combined might of every lantern on the emotional spectrum and most of the heroes of Earth to stop the Blackest Night. Hand was forced to join the compassionate Indigo tribe to atone for his sins. Number 7. Ragdoll, Peter Merkel. Peter Merkel was triple-jointed, meaning that he could bend and contort his body into impossible positions. Throughout the Golden and Silver Ages, he bedeviled both the Flashes and was often a member of the secret societies. Finally, years of contortion took their toll and the elderly Merkel was in extreme pain. Relocating to Opal City, Merkel began to gather the homeless, lost, and disenfranchised towards him. Using his skills at hypnosis and the promise of better days to turn the discarded into a cult that would commit evil in his name, Opal City soon became under the fiery very siege of the cult, and the aging elder starman Ted Knight couldn't handle it alone. He called in several of his Justice Society friends, and they stemmed the tide. The captured Ragdoll gloated that he could run his cult from jail, and that he would target all of the loved ones of the assembled heroes. As the heroes pondered on this, Ragdoll slipped his bonds, and the heroes all fired at once, killing him quickly. Somehow, though, he survived, and Merkel was approached by the demon Necron, who gifted him with youth and mobility in exchange for his soul. Ragdoll turned up next in another incarnation of the Secret Society, but was seemingly killed for good when he double-crossed the Society in an attempt to acquire the mask of Johnny Sorrow. Number 6. Calendar Man, Julian Day. Julian Day went from one of Batman's sillier villains to one of his more odd ones. Now, Day had always been interested in calendars and dates. He based his inventions and crimes around days of the week, holidays, or special occurrences of that day. He would often dress in costume-specific attires, but he also had a costume that had a cape with calendar pages cascading off of the shoulders. So in short, he was brilliant, but easily defeated. In Batman The Long Halloween, however, Calendar Man was reimagined as an emotionless serial killer who still used holidays to commit his crimes. Day was a resident at Arkham Asylum, and Batman and Commissioner Gordon questioned Day on what he knew about the new holiday killer. Day offered up chilling and cryptic clues to the Dark Knight that may have been more confusing than helpful. But one new wrinkle to the life of Calendar Man that came after the DC rebirth is that Day lives and dies with the seasons. He's reborn every spring but keeps his memories and ages throughout the year to finally die at winter's end. Then he crawls out of the husk of his own corpse a new man on the first day of spring. Number 5. The Shade, Richard Swift. The Shade started out as a fairly simplistic crook whose cane created an area of darkness, and he spent most of his time robbing banks and confounding both the Golden and Silver Age Flash. He was very prominent in several groups like the Injustice Gang and several secret societies, but rarely distinguished himself at all. But after the 0 Hour event, the Shade was portrayed as a morally ambiguous British gentleman whose powers far extended beyond simple darkness control. You see, there are monsters within his darkness. He can travel anywhere, he can move across dimensions, and he's immortal. Through his own journals, we learned that a mystical event in 1838 gave him his powers, and all that running around with the Flashes was little more than just a game to him. The Shade has also chosen to protect Opal City. He owns a beautiful home in the Parisian area of the city. He never conducts crimes there and tries to keep others away. Even centuries into the future, Shade is still looking after Opal in his own weird and unique way. Number 4. Professor Zoom and the Reverse Flash. Now, Thorne discovered a time capsule with one of Barry Allen's uniforms and a tachyon device amplifying the speed force residing within the suit. Calling himself Professor Zoom, he used it to commit crimes, but the Flash time traveled to stop him. Thorne became obsessed with Barry and traveled back in time to replace him, where he killed Barry's wife, and later, when Zoom attempted to kill his new fiancée, Barry snapped his neck. Now, the Reverse Flash that emerged from the crisis is a Barry Allen wannabe who changed his appearance to look like him and found the cosmic treadmill in an antique store. Recreating Barry's accident, Thorne used the treadmill but arrived after Barry's death. Zoom fought Wally West, the second Flash, instead. Thorne believed that Barry was destined to kill him and later believed that he was Barry until Wally tricked him into time traveling back to his native time period. After Rebirth, Zoom murdered Golden Age hero Johnny Quick and attempted to kill Impulse, Max Mercury, and Wally's children, who also had speed powers. Thorne also revealed that he was behind the death of Barry's mother in his youth. Barry and Zoom battled throughout the Speed Force, and Jay Garrick disconnected Thorne from his connection to the Force, robbing him of all of his powers. Number 3. The Purple Man, ZEBEDIAH KILLGRAVE. The Purple Man was a minor villain in the early days of Daredevil. He had developed his persuasion powers after being doused with some kind of Soviet chemical in his native Russia. Coming to New York, he used his power to manipulate others to perform crimes, wait on him, or undertake other activities. Daredevil's will proved too strong to be manipulated though, and Killgrave was defeated. Killgrave resurfaced when he kidnapped Jessica Jones, who was known as Jewel, and held her prisoner for over 8 months. He repeatedly made her strip naked and beg him for sex while making her watch him sexually assault other women. This torture continued until Killgrave ordered Jessica to destroy Daredevil. She strangely mistook the Scarlet Witch for Daredevil and attacked her instead. Even more strangely, the Avengers beat her into a coma. Jean Grey brought her out of the coma and created a block to prevent Killgrave's powers from controlling her ever again. Killgrave found that he had a number of children that he had fathered with the women that he had mesmerized. Many of them had some or all of his powers and banded together in vengeance against their father. The Kingpin, another person whose will was too strong for Killgrave to manipulate, recently tried to kill him and steal his power. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Alexander Lex Luthor began his criminal existence as the stereotypical mad scientist. The egotistical but brilliant man created devices and schemes to thwart the newly arrived Man of Steel or steal funds for his research, and usually Superman would get in his way and send him off to prison. The Silver Age relegated this Luthor to Earth 2 and gave him the name of Alexei. Earth 1 gets a slightly more stable but still evil Lex Luthor, who began his relationship with Superman as a teenager when the two started out as friends. But the Man of Steel miniseries created the evilest thing that a writer of the 1980s could think of: a corporate CEO. Lex owned most of Metropolis, paid scientists to create things for him, and then took the credit. Luthor presented a public face as a philanthropist while he conducted evil schemes behind the scenes. He managed to manipulate his way into the White House until his corruption is uncovered by Batman. After several more universe reboots, Lex is something of an anti-hero. He's even worn Superman's S-shield and was also briefly a member of the Justice League. But make no mistake, Luthor only looks out for himself and his own interests, no matter what it looks like on the surface. And number 1, Calculator. Noah Cutter. The character of the Calculator was based on the then brand new pocket calculator, complete with buttons on his chest and an actual LCD display in his helmet that created images kind of like the Green Lantern's ring. The claim was that the buttons on his costume analyze the hero's weaknesses and turns defeat into victory. At least that was the theory, but he often got his ass handed to him by Batman and Robin. He was eventually retconned to be a villain version of Barbara Gordon's Oracle. Calculator would use his genius intellect and gift for strategy to give villainous suggestions, tactics, and escape scenarios for $1,000 a question. He also became obsessed with learning the identity of Oracle and was a key member of Lex Luthor's secret society. He usually worked behind the scenes and rarely engaged in any of the dangerous field operations, which, when you remember all of his beatdowns, was probably a smart idea. Cutler was also then revealed to be the father of original Super Friends character Wendy and Marvin. He became violent towards the birds of prey when Marvin was killed and Wendy was injured. And while suffering from OCD and having a mental breakdown, definitely did pretty well for a guy who took his inspiration from a pocket calculator. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 comic book supervillains that were improved through retcons. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules, and you can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, but the O is a 0. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.